Okay, welcome everyone to the class. I'm very excited to start a new series. So this is going to be, each week will be a different topic, and there will be a connection to the weekly Torah portion, but it will be also sort of taking an independent topic and then giving the Jewish perspective based on different Torah sources and Kabbalah and all sorts of interesting sources. So the topic today is about manifestation. And the question is, can a person, through just thinking about something or visualizing something, to just manifest it into reality? Imagine you're like sitting on your couch and you visualize in yourself, a successful career, a clean kitchen, and then you close your eyes and you're really thinking and you're doing all the positive thinking and you're manifesting it. Oh, got it. What happens when you wake up? All you have is a good nap. The kitchen is the dishes are still dirty, nothing happened. So the question is there any truth in this concept of manifestation, of the power of the thought, that when you think about something, you can attract, or the law of attraction, when you think about something, you can attract that thing. We do have, as it calls pseudoscience, not necessarily like hard science, proved, backed by evidence, but there are many people, share stories. If you go online, all sorts of spiritual gurus and the sort, they will share stories about how they manifested their dream partner or their dream job and how they thought about it and then it came about. Question is, does Judaism believe in that? Is there any validity to that? So that's the sort of the question. So I'd love to open up just as an open question to hear anyone's thoughts, what you think about it before we jump in.
Well, can I speak? I can't see the videos because there's a line there, but oh, there we are. Is that did somebody in the room want to speak
So
first?
Alex said that if there
Okay.
wasn't some truth in it, then we wouldn't be having a class about it.
Right. And I definitely manifested where I'm now living. I feel I'm
Yeah.
living on the Thames. I can show it to you there. There's the Thames. And
Wow, it's
there,
beautiful.
yeah, and I used to sit under that tree on the other side for years,
Yeah,
wanting this house,
One
and
second.
it came up for sale when my daughter.
So again, they wanted to see the view from the window.
Yeah.
Show you the view again, please.
Oh, sorry. Yes, the.
Oh wow! Good man.
Yeah, and it's under that weeping willow tree that I used to sit when my two girls were in university, and I knew that the only house on the road I could afford was this one. And then it came up for sale, and the woman didn't really want to sell, but the estate agent said go and bond with her. And then anyway, one thing and another, it's one of the examples, I believe, of manifesting. Yes.
Amazing. Okay, can you guys see this? Yeah, what was your answer?
Yes, it's a close question. It's an open question. I thought, oh, I can't really expand on that, but I just know that.
From your own life experience.
Your thoughts are paired with action, and yeah.
Oh, very good. So Alex says if your thoughts are paired with action, that is a very big distinction. So thank you for saying that, Alex, because that is going to lead us into the what? Good question. I don't know. So we're going to start with text 1. Alex, would you like to read? So we'll go around the table. Text 1, 1.1.
Rabbi Yitzhak said, it's a person, if a person says to you, I have not labored, but have nevertheless found success, do not believe him. However, if he says to you, I have labored and have found success, believe him.
So this is a very extreme quote. It doesn't say, if someone says, I have not labored, but nevertheless found success, it doesn't say that, maybe we believe him, maybe we don't believe him. It says factually, Without hard work, if someone says, I did not do hard work, but I had this sort of all this success, the person, he's don't believe him. Very, very, very harsh statement. Avi, would you like to read the next one, 1.2?
Not my master.
Okay, so we'll come back to you.
I'm good.
Are you good?
My father leert schon doof, nou, you got me, Sneerson.
Sneerson.
Snelson, oh, okay. Writes in one of his letters, a single act is better than 1,000 sighs. Our God lives in Torah and mitzvot are eternal. Quit the groaning and work hard in actual service, and God will be gracious to you.
So this is very interesting. He says one good action is better than 1,000 sighs. So what's the idea of a sigh? When a person sighs, imagine you're driving on the motorway and all of a sudden you get a flat tire. So the first thing you do is your body just lets out a big sigh. Oy vey. And what is the physiology of a sigh? It's letting out emotional tension. So there's something interesting. When we sigh, it's almost like physically or what's the word? Physiologically, thank you. We are almost fooling ourselves that we're doing something because we're letting out a sigh, we're releasing tension. This world, this physical world that we're in, is built on the premise of resistance. And by taking action, we push through the resistance to create an outcome. The world is a world of action, and we have to do the action to push through to create an outcome. It's almost like there's the gravity. If you don't do anything, there's the law of atrophy, right? Where everything just, if you don't do anything, everything just crumbles down. You'll become fat. You'll be unhealthy. You'll have, your teeth will rot. You have to take action in order for things to happen. The action is what pushes through the resistance. And the idea of sighing, when you're overwhelmed, you just sigh, it gives your body the illusion that you're doing something because you're releasing that emotional tension, but really nothing changed. Hence, the Rebbe said this deep idea is that one action is greater than 1,000 sighs. So this is basically saying the first premise is that action is the most important thing. We have to have action in order to have any outcome. And let's take the example of being on the motorway and having a flat tire. So instead of just sitting there and complaining, and you can start, thinking and manifesting that, your car will be fixed, you have to pick up the phone, call the AA, or if you know how to fix a tire yourself, pull out the tire, fix it, and you take the action and you get the outcome. But action is even more powerful than just that, because slowly, when you do one action and you do another action and you do another action, you build up a momentum, and slowly that changes the type of person that you are. Action becomes habit becomes character, and character makes the person who you are. So this is, we learned in the previous course from Pirkei Avot, 1.3, Yaron.
One mitzvah leads to another mitzvah, and one
transgression. So basically, when you do one thing, you take action and you build up the momentum, and slowly that changes the trajectory of your life and the person that you become. There is a, say, the typical Western idea that, follow your passion, wait till your heart feels something, and then eventually, the good actions will flow from there. Judaism says the opposite. So there is a quote from, it's not written here in the text, but from one of the great rabbis who said in Hebrew, "Acharei ha'ma'asim nimshachim halavavot," which means after the action, the heart will follow, which means you need to start with taking action. And when you do that, then the heart will follow, which is the opposite of the way society thinks, or in some cultures, they think that, the most important thing, let's say I want to become a generous person. So instead of just, listening to podcasts and reading books about generosity, take out your wallet and go help a homeless person and do it again and do it again. And then you will become a generous person. Even if in the beginning it feels fake, it feels like you're phony, it feels like you're doing something that's not you, but you do it once, twice, three times, eventually, after the action, the heart will follow. So, and the same is also true the other way around. So just like with positive actions, when you take a lot of positive actions, then you have that sort of positive momentum. It also works the other way around in the negative. If a person does something negative once, so, okay, you feel bad, maybe, you made a mistake. It's not, you don't tie your identity to that mistake that you made. When you do something many, many times, eventually you lose your spiritual sensitivity or your moral sensitivity, and it just becomes a part of who you are. So this is actually the next quote from 1.4. Deborah, do you want to read 1.4?
Yamara is surprised at this. Can it enter your mind that it is permitted because he has sinned twice? Rather, repeated behavior dulls his sensitivity until the sin feels to him as though it were permitted.
You do something a lot of times, then eventually you lose your sensitivity and it feels as if it's okay. Imagine someone, God forbid, shoplifts, goes to the store the first time, they'll come home and they'll feel very guilty. But once, if God forbid, they do it again and again and again, well, they start to justify, and all of a sudden it becomes normal. So yeah, a single act is better. Could you guys see the screen, by the way?
Mhm.
A single act is better than 1,000 sighs. The heart is drawn after the action. One mitzvah leads to another mitzvah, and one transgression leads to another transgression. So this is basically, and to sum it up with the, again, another quote from Pirkei Avot, which we learned in the previous course, text 1.5. Ben, do you want to read?
Freedom of choice is granted, and the world is judged with goodness. Everything is judged according to the number of a person's good deeds.
Bartenura is the commentary, yeah.
According to the degree to which a person repeats and persists in doing good, so is his reward increased.
So basically, to sum it up, we say the world is judged based on action. It's not judged based on intentions, motivations. It's judged based on action. So that is the first premise. We say that, what creates an outcome in this physical world that we're in, action is what matters. Action is what brings the outcome. Now, if that's the case, then why does the Torah and all the books that we learn and we read in the Torah give so much attention and energy to the human internal, our thoughts and our intentions and our emotions? Why is the Torah, if it's just all about the dry action, the Torah would be much shorter. But we learn, we know there's definitely more to that. So we're going to now go into step 2, which is basically the importance of how our mind or our mindset affects our action. So we're going to start with a story from actually last week's Parsha that we just read yesterday of Shlach. We had the story of the spies, where, the Jewish people, they're in the desert, they're about to go into Israel, and the Jewish people say, let's send spies to see the land, to see how easy or difficult it will be to conquer it. They send the spies, and they come back with a bad report, right? Everyone knows the story, and it's a very tragic event. So there's one interesting quote there, and I'll ask Talia to read from text 2.1.
There we saw the giants, the sons of Anak, descended from the giants. In our eyes, we seemed like grasshoppers, and so we must have looked to them.
So the spies were saying that when they were there, they saw these everything was big. The people were giants and the fruits were really big. They brought back a big cluster of grapes that have 8 people to carry it. And they came back to say basically, oh, this is a terrible place because the people are they're too big and mighty, and if we come there, they're just gonna kill us. There's no way we can conquer the land. And that's the story of the spies. But it's interesting, if you look at the actual thing that they said. First of all, they said, we were like grasshoppers in our own eyes, and so we were in theirs. So obvious question, like, how do we know what the giants or the people of the land thought of them? Did they, climb up and interrogate them and ask them, what do you think of us? How did they know what the people thought of them? Okay, so Yaron says that they really didn't, they lied.
I was in shul yesterday, and by the way, we didn't get a minyan because there's a problem with the people in the synagogue, but we did go through this portion. And they said that actually it wasn't that there were any giants, but that they were frightened to take responsibility to build a country. Did you ever hear that interpretation? that they went back and said they were giants because they saw it as a giant problem to be solved, to go and take responsibility, to build cities and take, be leaders and things like that.
Interesting. No, that's an interesting interpretation. I'm sure there's many. One of the things we keep saying in all of our classes is that every story in the Torah and every teaching has many layers of interpretation. There is no one, only one layer. There's always multiple layers. So there could be the physical, the metaphorical, the spiritual, etc. So over here, we're saying that they looked at also why grasshoppers? Why specifically a grasshopper? Anyone wants to? So from here, we coin the phrase, the grasshopper effect. The grasshopper effect is when a person, what is a grasshopper? A grasshopper is very reflective. If there's a grasshopper on the tree and a person comes by, it immediately flies away. Whenever there's something like a commotion or something, it feels like a movement, it doesn't have any substance, any stability, any confidence. Anything, the slightest wind, the grasshopper will fly away. And also grasshoppers are obviously very small compared to human beings. So they view themselves as grasshoppers, meaning they view themselves as very small and weak. And because they view themselves that way, that caused the other people, the people of the land, to also view them that way. Now, how does that work? What's the mechanism? Because we have our verbal communication, but we also have our body language. If you think very small of yourself, it's not only going to come across in the words you say, it's also going to come across in your body language. You're going to have a hunched back, and you're going to speak without confidence. You're not going to stand up straight. So because the spies, they looked at themselves as grasshoppers, then that caused the external environment to pick up on that and to reflect that back to them. So for example, let's say someone goes to a job interview and they feel unworthy of getting the job. They feel like, oh, really, I'm a phony and I'm not worthy of this job. I don't have the skills or whatever it is. And they come to the job and they say all the right things, they answer the questions. But if they're thinking that to themselves, it will reflect, it will come across. And then ultimately, that's what we call self-fulfilling prophecy. Because they've thought that of themselves, it's ultimately what's going to end up happening. So this is in Mishlei, King Solomon writes, so and Beverly, would you like to read 2.2 and 2.3?
A person's fears become a trap. And 2.3, what I dreaded has come upon me. So
a person's fear becomes his trap. And then the Eiv, he had a very life of suffering, Job. And he says, what I dreaded has come upon me. Question is, how do you read that verse? Is it just a coincidence that the thing that he happened to have dreaded ended up happening? Or is the fact that he dreaded it played a role in the fact that ended up happening?
You kind of program itself. When you dread, you fear of something. You test it.
Oh, so
you program yourself. You start acting to bring it to reality.
So there's a few layers to manifestation. There's one in the reality, one in the
mind,
spirituality, and then from the actual thinking in reality, you can make it to the second layer of spirituality, but then if you carry on, or if the luck also helps you, then it comes down again to reality.
So we're gonna speak about it soon. We'll get to it. So the first thing we're saying is that we have to have the premise that action is what causes outcomes in this physical world. That's the premise. But now we're saying it's not so simple, because action is very much influenced by the way we think about things. If we're very fearful, then that will become a self-fulfilling prophecy and it will end up happening. But how does that work? Why do our thoughts change the outcome? So here's a very fascinating explanation from the Maharal, who was a 16th century Jewish philosopher. He says a very fascinating explanation on a quote from the Talmud. The Talmud says that someone who is unduly concerned with becoming poor will eventually become poor. So someone who is very anxious and worried about being poor will eventually become poor. That's a quote from the Talmud, which is interesting to understand and to unpack what that means. The Maharal gives a very fascinating explanation. So I'll read this one, 2.4. Whoever is unduly concerned with becoming poor will eventually become poor. The explanation is that a person can influence themselves far more easily than others. When you act upon yourself, there's no where the recipient, sorry, there's no resistance, unlike when you try to influence someone else, where the recipient might resist and refuse to let the influence take hold. When a person fears poverty, they are effectively giving poverty a space to operate within them, and so that very thing comes upon them. This is as Job said, that which I dreaded has come upon me. When a person fears something, they diminish themselves before it, and in doing so, they enable it to act upon them. This is especially true regarding poverty, which is defined as absence. When a person surrenders themselves to the sense of absence, they receive that absence, which is always chasing after them. And regarding falling, the early sages also said that the fear of falling is what leads to it. For if a person takes a single wooden board and places it across a river to cross from one side to the other, he is liable to fall while crossing. Yet if that same board were placed on the ground, his feet would not slip at all. This happens because the thought he thinks about falling acts upon him, for the intellect is the primary cause of action. So he says a very fascinating idea. Imagine you have this very narrow bridge with no walls on the side, and it's 500 meters across the River Thames, yeah? And you have to walk across it. What are the likelihood that you'll fall? Pretty likely. Unless you're like a professional tightrope walker. Now take the same log of wood and just put it on the ground, and you have to walk, from one end to the other. What's the likelihood that you'll fall off? Almost none. Question is, what's the difference? There's actually no difference in the physical reality between the two. It's walking from one end to the other, and the only difference is in one case the person has a fear from the external reality because it's very high up. He has the fear of falling, and therefore he becomes preoccupied about not falling, which therefore takes away his focus from walking. And therefore that ends up causing him to fall. The very fear of falling is what ends up causing him to fall. Whereas if it was just on the ground, there would be nothing to fear, so he just focuses on walking and he walks. To put a little bit of welcome, Estelle.
Hello.
Tools.co.uk. This is Healed the Charity Watering.
So to give like modern scientific or psychological terms to it, when a person is in a state of fear, their prefrontal cortex becomes hijacked by their amygdala. So the prefrontal cortex, which is the part that's responsible for staying calm and rational thinking, becomes hijacked by the amygdala, by the fight and flight part of the brain. And therefore that affects the person's nervous system, where his muscles will tense up. And therefore that's what ends up causing the person to fall, because his muscles become all tense, the same muscles that were supposed to help him walk properly, and that's what leads him to fall. So the same thing, think about it in the case of poverty. If a person is always very anxious about being poor, then first of all, he has a very negative mindset. He's always thinking about scarcity. He doesn't become aware to opportunities for him to be able to do things, and it's off-putting to other people. And eventually, he ends up having a self-fulfilling prophecy. Whereas if you think really optimistically, think about like young children are just optimistically, they have the most creative thoughts in the world. They think about, going to space. But when we become more pessimistic about life, then eventually our minds, our capacity to be able to achieve things become also more minimized. So the bottom line is, what we're saying from this part is that, like, one practical idea that we can take from here is the importance of our mental diet, meaning what we actually allow to consume our minds. If we're always consuming media which is negative, politics and this and that negative media, we allow our mind and our body and our psyche to be filled with negative energy and negative ideas and doom and gloom, then that will be the life that we'll have, that will manifest. Alex, we spoke about, is there a future for Jewish people in this country? We can, with anti-Semitism and this, we can fill our minds with worry and doom and gloom. But on the other hand, it's important to fill our minds with positive, spiritual, holy things, and that will then manifest in our actions, that will take the appropriate actions, and we'll have a good life. So just to sum up what we said so far. This world is a world of action. Action is what pushes through resistance to create an outcome in this world. So, but how do we control our actions? It's very much controlled by our mindset, the way we think about things, the way we think about ourselves, our ability to succeed or to do something, positive or negative, will influence our actions. So up until this point, everything seems pretty much simple and aligned with regular psychology. Everything makes sense, right? But now we're going to sort of take it up a notch. So we're going to go to text to 3.1. So until now, yes, I'll just explain what we're going to say. So until now, we're saying that our thoughts, our internal energy, our thoughts, what we think about, what we visualize, the words we say, it all stays in the person's body. So your thoughts stay in your skull, your words. And the only thing is, we're saying that your thoughts influence your action, and your action is what determines the outcome. So the outcome is only determined by your action. And the only thing that your thought plays a role is that your thought is what influences your actions that you take. But now we're going to actually say that according to the Torah, we'll see now in Kabbalah, there's actually our thoughts and speech have actual spiritual power to create effects, to create outcomes. And how do we see that? First of all, by seeing how much the Torah gives emphasis to our internal thoughts and beliefs and things that we think about and that we say. So to begin with, there is a book called the Sefer HaChinuch, who wrote a commentary on the 613 commandments of the Torah. And he says that there is something called the 6 ongoing commandments. So from all 613 commandments, there are 6 of them that apply 24/7. So for example, most commandments is something you do, once a week on Saturday, we have a mitzvah to keep Shabbat. So it's something you do once a week. Tefillin, we do once a day. But there are 6 mitzvahs that apply 24/7, the whole entire time. Okay, so let's, is it your, actually, we're going to carry on with the, Louise, with the people on the Zoom. Louise, do you have the text handout?
No, I don't, but I can see it in front of me. The Torah, should you want me to read it?
So that's not the actual text, but you could, it's fine. So Alex,
okay,
yeah,
sorry.
no
There are
problem.
6 commandments whose obligation is constant. They never cease to apply to a person, not even for a single moment, throughout all their days. And they are to believe in God, that He exists and He is the source of all. 2, not to believe in any other power besides Him. 3, to unify Him, to understand that He is the one and encompasses all reality. 4, to love Him. 5, to be in awe of Him. 6, not to stray after the thoughts of heart or the vision of the eyes.
What is the common denominator between all of these 6 commandments? They're all internal.
Oh,
None of them have any action. We don't say the most important 6 commandments is go to synagogue on Yom Kippur and, have a bar mitzvah or a bat mitzvah. None of that. It's all internal stuff. Our beliefs, our thoughts. Yeah, all of these are from the Torah mitzvot. Yeah. The first 5 are relationship between man and God, and the 6th one is between man and the world is not to follow the.
Well, it's also from 10 commandments.
Not all of them, some of them, yes. Okay, so now this is mostly between man and God. Okay, so we're saying that the importance is in our belief, in our belief, which makes sense. But let's take it up a notch between interpersonal reactions between people and other people. So 3.2, Avi.
Do not hate your brother in your heart.
Which is, do not hate your brother in your heart. It sounds very simple, but actually, if you think about it, it's pretty powerful. It's pretty extreme in a way, because Torah is a legal system. It's the Jewish legal system from God. Now, in a regular secular legal system, we have to judge based on action. If a person thinks of doing something wrong, can they be taken to court for that? No, that would be ludicrous, right? If you think of doing something bad, there's nothing wrong. Imagine you have someone goes to work and they really hate their coworker, their colleague in work. They're sitting by their desk and they're seething with anger about the person, but they don't act upon it. They don't do anything. They don't say anything. It's all internal. Does anybody suffer other than their own internal resentment that they're carrying and negative thoughts? Did the other person, did anything happen to them? Can you be held accountable or taken to court for that?
There's no action.
There's no action, right? You didn't do anything. What in England?
In England, you can.
I love it.
For
In England, you can be taken to court for praying in the wrong place.
There and being quiet.
right,
You
yeah.
can't do this. And then
So it doesn't say in the Torah, it doesn't say don't.
Police. Not police.
there is a certain area surrounding
I've seen
every.
this video, yeah.
Anyway, let's not get sidetracked. So the Torah says, don't hate your brother in your heart. The commandment isn't not to do acts of hatred, but it's a commandment. It's about your heart. Don't harbor negative feelings to another person in your heart. That's a transgression. That's a commandment from the Torah. So that begs the question, why? Why does the Torah say that it's so important not only not to do actions of hatred, but not to even internally in your own mind and heart to have those thoughts? We see from here that a person's thoughts have a real weight. So we have to understand what's the reason for that. Why is that? So for that, we need to turn to the Kabbalah. So we're going to turn now to text 3.3. Whose turn is it? Avi, I think. This is from the Kesser Shem Tov, which was written by the Baal Shem Tov, the founder of the Hasidic movement.
If the person thought, "Woe are the world above him that stand over him." If his thought is centered on holiness and spirituality, then the worlds above him are aligned with that same holiness. But if his thought is centered on impurity, negativity, so too are those worlds aligned. And according to that thought and those words, so do things pass before him in the physical.
So that's a very interesting idea. And let's take that further back to the Zohar, which came way before the Baal Shem Tov. The Zohar explains the same idea. Yaron, do you want to read 3.4?
The upper world give only gives only to the lower world according to the condition in which the lower world is found at any given time. If the lower world shows a smiling countenance, light and joy from the world above pour down upon it. But if it is sad and downcast, it receives the severity of judgment.
So what we see here is that basically we have two parallel worlds, Kabbalah explains. You've got the physical world that we live in, and then there are spiritual worlds above, which are parallel to our world, and they have almost like a energetic connection, where when action happens, imagine you have a rope, and you have two people holding the two ends of the rope. When you wiggle the rope on one end, it causes the other end to wiggle as well. It causes an effect. So what we're saying here, the Baal Shem Tov and the Zohar are saying, is that however we act here in this world, so if you look at this, can you see the imaging? So you have your thoughts, whether they're positive or negative, happy or sad, holy or negative. Those thoughts, they rise above to the world above, which then align to whatever way you're thinking. The above world aligns to your same process. And then it shines back in a more magnified way, the same energy back to you to create what unfolds in the physical reality. So let's say the Zohar, for example, what he's saying is that if a person the Zohar is speaking about the importance of being happy, of joy. So he says when you're joyful, then it causes almost like gods or the upper worlds to be joyful, and then they'll send back joy to your reality. Think about, let's say, a parent and a child. Imagine you're holding a baby, and the baby is smiling to you. It arouses the same emotion in the parent of joy. Or let's say if the baby is crying, then it causes the parent who's holding him to become anxious and to become stressed. So we mirror each other. So the same thing is we're saying is that God, or the spiritual world, the spiritual energy, mirrors whatever we have. So if we have positive thoughts, if we have thoughts of joy, of happiness, then that will come. Then things will be joyful. Things will be positive. Things will flow. However, if we're very sad and depressed, then things will become stuck. That's a very, very powerful idea. So there is a story, the Tzemach Tzedek. You can see here on the picture. This was the Tzemach Tzedek. He was the third Chabad Rebbe, and one of his students came to him, and he had a son who was very. Can you see the? He had a son who was very sick, and he came to the Rebbe to ask what to do, to ask for a blessing. So the Rebbe said to him one quote, which became afterwards a very famous quote. He said it in Yiddish: "Tracht gut wird sein gut." In English means think good and then it will be good. If you think positive, if you think good, then it will be good. And as the story goes, he went with thoughts of trust and hope and in Hashem, and then his son became better. So when you listen to the story superficially, it seems like either a bit woo-woo, or maybe that seems like the same idea that we said in the beginning of of manifestation gurus who say just sit on your couch and put a vision board and just think your whatever you want to manifest. I want to have a mansion. I want to have this. I want to have that. We said that it's not fully true. You can't just sit on the couch and just think of something and it will just come. So the question is, what is the difference? Because it seems very similar what we're saying here from the Kabbalah to the mainstream idea of manifestation. It seems like it's the same thing, but there is a very subtle difference, which is subtle, but it's extremely different, and it's a very important distinction. So what is that difference? If we view, our thoughts, we have the ultimate power. Our thoughts can create reality. Then, then the spiritual energy or God or whatever you call it is basically just like a vending machine. And we have the coins. We put in the coins, and then we put in our request, and then the request has to come to be. But we don't believe that to be. So what is the mechanism? How does it work that our thoughts create the parallel energy up above to then send that energy back down here to manifest in reality. How does that work? So there's one missing ingredient, and that is in text 3.5. First, I'll tell you the word. Bitachon. Bitachon means trust in God.
The dollar.
In God we trust, all others pay cash. So, yeah, God is not a spiritual vending machine. So then how does this work? So whose turn are we up to reading? Deborah, I think yours maybe? Text 3.5.
But when it is the opposite, where a person is in a state of constant fear regarding strict justice and punishment, they are effectively tethering themselves to those very judgments. Heaven forbids that misfortune should result, but it is the verse states, the very things they dreaded, I will bring upon them. The very things they dreaded, I will bring upon them. Wherever a person's thoughts are focused, that is where they are spiritually attached. If someone dwells on judgment, they become bound to the realm of judgment. But when one places their trust in kindness, it's where they are, and kindness will encompass them from all sides.
And Ben, would you like to read 3.7?
Trust bitachon does not mean that one believes that because God's kind.
So just before you read out, I just want to give a little bit of a preface. So in Judaism, we have two ideas which sound similar, but they're different. In Hebrew, they're called emunah and bitachon, faith and trust. Faith and trust are not the same thing. What's the difference between faith and trust?
When you believe and you know. Faith is like it may happen, may not happen. When you trust, you know it's going to happen.
Very good. So trust means, like, if you, let's say, trust a person, you trust that they're going to keep their word. What they say they're going to do, you trust that it's good, that they're going to keep their word. 100%, no doubt. That's what trust is. Faith is we have faith in Hashem. What does that mean? Faith that everything that God does is for the good. When something happens that we don't understand, whether it's to us or to someone else or to the world, we know that God created the world. God is the one who's controlling the world. And God is good by nature. His essence is good. And therefore, everything that God does is good, whether we can understand it or not. But we still believe that it's from God, and everything that's from God is good, whether we can understand why it's good for us or not. Remember, once we gave an example of someone that that lands from a different planet into a surgery room in the hospital and sees the surgeon with the the masks and wearing the full robe, and there's a person lying on a bed, and they're cutting up the person and doing a surgery. The person that came from a different planet would look at that and would see that's a very evil act. But because they don't know the full picture, they don't understand that they're really saving the person's life. So faith means that we understand that we are limited, our perception is limited, and therefore we don't understand the full picture. We are living in a certain, if you think about it, in the full vastness of the world, of the universe, we're living in a tiny speck of time and space. And our reality and our perception is very limited compared to God, who has the full 3D, 360 view of everything that's happening. And therefore, for us, we look at something, it might seem bad to us, but because we have faith in God, we know that everything that God does is for the good. So that's what faith means. So to put it in other words, faith is after the fact, and trust is before the fact. So for example, let's say I have a sick relative and I want them to get better. So trusting in God means that I'm trusting that God will heal them and make them better. But if God forbid someone passes away, then I have, after the fact, faith in God that everything that happened was meant to be and was for the ultimate good. So I want to now, we're not going to be going into faith. Right now we're going to be going into trust. Trust means, again, just like you trust another person, you're certain that they're going to do the thing. So this is a very difficult thing to understand about God. I trust that God will give me what I need. Well, how do you know? how do you know that God, how do you know that you even deserve it? Isn't that against the whole premise that this world operates based on reward and punishment and consequences from our actions? So if a person is, I don't know, is grappling with a problem or with a struggle, what does it mean? I trust God that it's going to be okay. How do you know? Maybe it's not meant to be okay. On what basis do you trust that it's going to be okay? How does that work? Right, simple question.
Good question. If it's outside of your control, how you believe it's going to?
Right. Yeah, on what basis do you trust? How do you know that's meant to happen? Maybe it's not meant to happen. Maybe you're supposed to, the person who's sick is supposed to die. How do you know that they're supposed to get better?
You need to do another action.
Oh, very good. So you hit it. Yaron, you hit the nail. So this is a very profound question, and the Rebbe gives a very, very fascinating answer. Text 3.7. Is it your turn? You're yet? I can't remember yet. Yeah, okay. So this is 3.7.
Okay, so bitachon does not mean that one believes that because God's kindness are beyond measure and limit, extended to the worthy and unworthy alike, he will therefore receive God's kindness without any effort on his part. For if that was so, the entire concept of reward and punishment would be nullified. Rather, trust is a labor and a toil within one's soul. It is this toil itself that brings down the kindness of God, which arrives as a direct result of a person's toil to trust in him. By a person truly relying from the depth of his soul upon the Holy One, blessed be he alone, to the point that he does not worry at all, this very internal arousal causes God to conduct himself with the person in a matching way, doing good for him. Even without that trust, he would not have been worthy of it.
So the idea of trust is that even if, I'm not worthy of having blessings or having whatever good thing I want, but the very act of trusting God in and of itself makes you worthy for him to then match that. So imagine, I don't know, I always come to examples of interpersonal relationships. Imagine you have a couple, you have a spouse. And if one spouse really shows, he's always showing up, shows unconditional love, unconditional commitment to the other spouse, it's only natural that the other one will, again, in most cases, unless there's exceptions, will reciprocate and reciprocate that love and trust back to the other one. So this is our relationship with God as well. The act of trust isn't some sort of, magical button that you can press. It's actually a difficult thing to achieve. It's a very big spiritual achievement to have true trust in Hashem. Let's take this example of the father who came to the rabbi to ask for his son was sick, and the rabbi said, "Oh, think good, then it will be good." Here, his son is sick. Doctors have no cure for him, and he's anxious. He can't sleep at night. He's worried about his son, and he's being told, "What do you have to do? Trust God." So to be able to have that, it's an internal spiritual achievement.
50% of any medicine.
Right. Yeah, true, 100%.
On Zoom, because I don't.
Yeah, sure. Do you have the link? Chabadsorry.com. Chabadsorry.com/Zoom. Okay.
There's the best medicine, like when you're in the hospital.
Yeah.
You're happy.
Yeah.
Just seems to go better somehow.
Yeah. So going back to this premise that we said before, that the way we are mirrors above. So it doesn't matter if a person is worthy or not worthy, but if we can put on our trust caps of saying, we are going to trust God, that God is going to, it's like trusting a parent, that the parent will give us what we need and take care of us. Then God looks at that and he's like, wow, that's amazing. And that trust itself is what causes him God to mirror that, and that will then create the positive outcome. That's how think good will be good works. So
said, if you smile, the world will smile back to you.
Yeah, exactly. So to contrast from the I don't know, the woo-woo idea of manifestation is where like you can just sit on your couch and manifest your dream mansion or whatever it is, where there's nothing you've done. There's not an action, not an internal spiritual, it's just, you're just thinking of something that you want from an egotistical place. There's no reason why the universe or God or whatever you want to call it will give that to you. But over here, we're explaining where it's very similar, but it's actually different, is that how the actions that we take, the mindset that we have, and the positive thoughts that we have, if they come with real trust in Hashem, that we trust that it will be good, which is not easy to do, then that will indeed create a positive outcome. So our thoughts have a lot of power.
So is this like the mechanism of prayer, essentially?
Yes, there's a few mechanisms of prayer. It's a big question as to, it's going into a whole other topic as to why do we need to pray so much? There's prayer 3 times a day. Why do we need to pray? And there's a few different reasons. One of them is, like you said, it's in order to be able to, it's not that God needs our prayer, but it's that we need our prayer. God doesn't need our prayer, but by us praying, it does something in us. It makes us a more, it's like a form of meditation. It makes us a more spiritual person, a more, thinking about what really matters and becoming more humble and, not being so self-centered or egotistical. And the prayer is actually more for us than it is for God. God doesn't actually need our prayers.
Prayers, but it's a contradiction between saying now that all you need to do is trust, to what we said earlier, that it's the action.
No, very good. So we're not saying all you need to do is trust, but you have to have trust plus action. So, for example, this father who was complaining, his son was sick, he had to go to the doctors. But if the doctors ultimately didn't have the cure, or whatever it is, he had to do the actions of whatever it is. Let's say taking him to the doctor. That's the vessel. So by creating the vessel together with the trust together, then that will create the blessing. It says in the Torah that God gave doctors permission to heal, which means that the doctors themselves don't innately have this power of healing. It's actually a power from God that he gave to the doctors, which is very interesting. So there's a lot of stories where people came to the Rebbe and they said, the doctor said they're hopeless. And the Rebbe said, don't listen to the doctor, because the doctor hasn't been given, the doctor was only given permission from God to cure. God never gave over the doctor the keys, to give the ultimate verdict, whether the person can be cured or not. That's God's verdict. God only gave the doctors permission to heal. So going to the doctor is maybe the vessel.
That is downhill.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about that actually.
Yeah.
Could I just say that when you woo-woo sitting on a settee, a lot of people who believe in manifestation are extremely spiritual, and even if they don't believe in God, they believe in a higher power of some sort. So I don't think most people are sitting on a settee hoping that their room will be clean in the morning. I think they are doing it from a higher power spiritual thing that you're talking about, but we're talking about God.
Yeah, I stand corrected. I don't mean to negate anyone who says they're doing manifestation. I only mean to be negating the sort of thing you'll see on TikTok and social media where people will be portraying, and maybe they do it as a marketing tactic to get people to buy their manifestation things like, oh, I manifested $100,000, look at my bank account. Those sort of superficial things. But I'm sure there are plenty of people who do it in a spiritual way, whether they're Jewish or not, or every person according to their belief. Ultimately, God is for everyone, whatever they want to call it. So yeah, so I stand corrected. If what I said came across that way, then I take that back. All right, so now and to Avi's point, we're not saying that trust alone is all that matters, but it's action plus trust. Action plus mindset, because mindset is what creates action, plus trust in God, So being spiritually connected is what then creates that outcome.
Before you start all this, how do you bring this thought? So I want 100 and whatever.
100,000. How much do you want?
You mentioned. So some people, they don't care, they don't need all this.
Right.
So how do you bring this desire in the first place?
Right. So it really depends where the desire is coming from. If you want a mansion just for some egotistical ways, then it's not necessarily it doesn't have a purpose, a spiritual purpose, so it's not going to be manifested. But if you have a mansion and you've got some real reason why it's going to help, save the world, which there definitely are reasons for that, then if you really believe that and you tune into that, then again, we're not saying that automatically just because you want it, it's going to happen. But if you then really if you have the conviction and you know that you need that because of it's going to bring good to the world, and you really believe that strongly, you will then go to the bank and you'll speak to the bankers with conviction that you need a loan because we need to save the world, and maybe that conviction will spill off, and it will come to happen, or maybe some big donor or philanthropist will come and give it to you. Like you don't know how it will happen, but it will happen. Hello, Adi.
Well, 8?
Yeah.
Well, 8 o'clock, is it?
7 o'clock.
You kidding?
Senor original.
How have you?
Did I say 8 o'clock?
No, one of the
messages.
Yeah. I feel so bad.
I think there was
Did I?
one message.
Yeah?
It's, 89.
Well, we do the whole thing for you. Here, take. Yeah.
We uploaded.
Yeah.
Right?
So basically, I'll give you a quick rundown. I'll give you a more detailed rundown in a minute, but a quick rundown, as we're saying, is that reality is created by our actions that we take. Our actions are dictated by our mindset. Whether, as the saying goes, whether you believe you can, you believe you can't, you're right. So if you have positive mindset, that will lead to positive action, which will lead to positive outcome. But then we go on and we say that our thoughts and our thoughts and feelings and words have spiritual power, because the spiritual world above from God will align and mirror the way we are. So if we're happy, then God will mirror back happiness and joy and positive energy. If we're being very negative, then God will align to that with judgment and harshness, and that will be mirrored back to us. So we're saying is that the power of the way we believe, and we spoke about trust, about how having trust in God is what makes us, whether we're worthy or not, even if we're not perfect and we've sinned, but just the very act of trusting God is what makes us worthy, that God should give us what our desires are, what our wishes and prayers are. Yeah.
Construction, for example, if I'm gonna build something, or I'm gonna build something in my life, I didn't knew how to build stuff. My father passed away, I had 2 houses to build, and I just knew I need to carry on, get up every morning and stick to it and do it. Back then, there wasn't even smartphones, and you can go and see how to do stuff, and like YouTube, yeah? Somebody to show you, now you can find everything. Back in the days, there was none. There was not YouTube.
We were there.
Yeah. So Google just started, and there was Yahoo, Alta Vista. I searched in images how to build a Google, and I had no clue how to do it. And I said, I'll buy all the materials, I'll go on the roof, I'll cut, and somehow it will sort it out. And God actually leads every single step until you do it. If you stick to something, you'll figure it out. Even opening a Chabad here is like
Absolutely.
building a roof without any normal.
Absolutely.
It's probably worse in
Yeah.
your case. So if you know something, you believe in it, and think so it will manifest itself.
So the last section is if our thoughts and speech, words, have such a powerful spiritual energy and effect, then it's important that we really are careful with the way we think and the way we speak, both about ourselves and about others. So, Adi, do you want to read 4.1? Do you like Samuel or Adi?
Okay.
Adi, okay.
Samuel is the official
Oh, cool.
household name.
Yeah.
And the middle name of Oded. And ever since I was a little boy, I was called Odi.
Adi, okay.
That's it. So, Aramaic or English?
English.
It was taught in the name of Rabbi Yossi. A person should never open his mouth to Satan and speculate about potential disasters.
And the next one?
It is forbidden to utter a word of calamity about a fellow Jew, even indirectly, by saying, if so-and-so were still alive, he would have come here, for the covenant is made with the lips. Words have the power to manifest. And so, in all such matters, one must be very careful about the habit of speech.
So this is very interesting because this is actually written in the Code of Jewish Law, which is a book, again, a book of law is all, it's not a book of Kabbalah or a book of spirituality, it's a book of law. And we're saying that a person cannot use their mouth to speak badly about another person.
So just tell us what Shulchan Aruch is.
Shulchan Aruch means the Code of Jewish Law.
But is it Talmud?
No. The Talmud, the Shulchan Aruch is based on the Talmud, but it extracts all the practical laws from the Talmud. So the Talmud is basically the whole gamut of Jewish law with the philosophy and the debates and the reasons and the back and forth, the dialogues. And the Shulchan Aruch is what extracted the bottom line, the law. What to do, what not to do.
The actual
Summary, but not just summary, but also the practical element only. So it's like reading like a book of like a legal book, a book of laws. Yeah. So it says that
Talmud is like to see the court proceedings and what happened inside it and what he said and he said and he said.
So we're saying is that it's a person, as they say, don't give the prosecuting attorney any material to work with. Don't say bad things. So for example, another example is don't speculate about bad things that can happen, because when you use your words, again, what you're doing is our words, they create energy above, which can then bring that to materialize, to happen. So for example, when you speak bad about another person, those words have the power to so every person has in them, in their soul, potential for good and bad. Potentially I can be a murderer. I have the potential to do that. And potentially I can be the most generous person. We have the potential for everything from good to bad and everything in the middle. When you speak badly about a person, what you're doing is you're basically, you're uncovering, you're drawing out, you're bringing out that element of negativity in that person to the surface, to the forefront, which is a very grave thing to do. So therefore he's saying, be very careful not to speak badly about another person or about the world. Don't speak bad about catastrophic things that can happen, because those words really have power. And I would like to actually share something very interesting about the Rebbe, the Lubavitcher Rebbe, who gave thousands of hours of talks in Yiddish mostly, and he was very, very careful to the extreme degree with the selection of words that he used. And one of the examples are, in his talks, he would never say the word bad. He would say, when he was speaking in a combination of Yiddish and Hebrew together, he would say, instead of saying, he would say, der tzad was is heipech hatov, the opposite of good. Instead of saying bad, you say the opposite of good. Another example was the Rebbe actually, he said that in Israel, when in Israel, how do you call a hospital in Hebrew? In his Beit Cholim. So the Rebbe actually protested, not protested, but he commented on that, and he suggested that instead of calling a hospital a Beit Cholim, the house of the sick, it should be called the Beit Refuah, the house of healing. Because exactly. So a choice of words is very important. That's basically like the bottom line. And I want to also yes, I was waiting for you to say that.
Conspiracy again.
You know, you need also to say, according to Pirkei Avot, הטוב שאתה רוצים לגיהנום. Also, the hospital is not the best place.
So I want to share one quick story and then conclude with a very, very powerful idea. So the story is, there was a chassid called the Mendel Futterfass who lived in Soviet Russia in the 1900s under communism. And he was sent to the gulags just for the crime of being Jewish for almost a decade. He sat in prison. And he was a real chassid of then it was the 6th Lubavitcher Rebbe, Rabbi Yosef Yitzchak Schneerson, who was the Rebbe, and then it later moved to America in 1940 and passed away in 1950. So this chassid, he was sitting in prison and he had nothing. He had nothing left. He had, he had no prayer books. He had no study books. He had nothing to do. He was just sitting there and sitting in prison. So he decided in his mind to write a letter to the Rebbe. In his mind, he didn't have a paper or pen to actually write a letter. In his mind, dear Rebbe, I'm writing to you from prison. I want to show, please help me. This is what I'm going through. And he sent off the letter in his mind to the Rebbe. He was in prison for almost 10 years. Eventually he came out, and his family, what happened was he was a very big activist in helping Jewish people escape Russia through forged Polish passports. Where his family, his wife and children, they were able to actually leave Russia with these falsified passports, and they eventually escaped and settled in London. They live in London, but he stayed behind to continue helping people. And eventually he got caught and he sat in prison. His family was already living in London. Eventually, once he was freed, he came and he was reunited with his family in London. And he came, and his wife told him that there was a letter that arrived from the Rebbe years ago addressed to him exactly around that date, or maybe a few weeks later, a telegram or a letter from when he wrote his letter to the Rebbe addressed to him, dear Mendel, and it was a letter written to him in response to his letter that he wrote in his thought. So, because the Rebbe is a spirit, the Rebbe is in tune with the Spirit. It's called Ruach HaKodesh. The Rebbe has the Holy Spirit, so he's able to know what's.
There are many stories of almost miracles like events that Rebbe involved with.
Yeah, and I want to actually finish with a really, really powerful idea, which again it just highlights the power of how our thoughts can make a massive shift and transformation. So, Alex, or someone from the Zoom, Estelle, do you have the book with you, the printout?
Which one?
You have the printout, the text.
I've got it on my phone.
Yeah, so would you like to read from the last page?
Which number is it?
4.7 on page 20. On page, I'm not sure what page it is. Page 9.
I only go up to 4.7.
Yeah, 4.7. Yeah, that one. The last one.
If a man, yes?
This is from Maimonides, The Laws of Marriage. Yeah.
Yes. If a man says to a woman, behold, you are betrothed to me, on the condition that I am a righteous man, even if he is known to be completely wicked, she is considered betrothed out of legal doubts. Why? Because perhaps he had a thought of repentance in his heart at that very moment.
Now, this is not a joke. This is Maimonides saying a law. So just to give you a little bit of context, in the laws of marriage and divorce, if a person says, the halachic way that marriage is constituted is when you say, you are betrothed to me, you give the ring, and they're married. You have two witnesses. Okay. Now, if a person says, you are married to me on the condition that so on some sort of condition. The whole book, if you look in the Talmud, there's a whole tractate on marriage, which goes into all these sort of hypothetical things. If a person says, if I'm married to you on condition that I have 100,000 pounds in my bank account. So if it's true, then we're married. If it's not true, then we're not married. So that, that's how it works. So over here, a person made a condition, which is something which is spiritual. I'm giving you a condition. I'm marrying you on the condition that I am a righteous man. So it says that even if he's known to be the most wicked person, it's possible that he is betrothed. So it's considered a doubtful marriage, which means that they need to have a legal divorce in order for them to marry somebody else. Why? Because it's possible that in one moment he had a thought of repentance. And if he had we don't know, it could be he did, it could be he didn't. But if he did have a thought of repentance in one moment, that would completely change him into a brand new person. Now he's a legally binding, a righteous person, no longer a wicked person. Now, since we don't know if he had that thought of repentance or not, so therefore it says that it's a doubtful marriage, and therefore he needs to have a divorce just to be sure. So we see from here a really powerful idea is that just one thought can change your entire reality, even in the most sobering topics of marriage and divorce. So from here we see the importance of how our thoughts and thoughts and words and beliefs really have a power to create ripple effects in spiritual realms and to manifest that back into reality. And if I can just sort of end with maybe like a takeaways again, I'll say this for myself, is to be more careful about my media diet. Just like we're careful what food we eat, we want to have, only eat healthy foods. We should also be very careful what we allow to come into our minds and thoughts, only to have positive and helpful and good and holy, not to allow bad and too much chronic negative stuff to enter us, because that really does have an effect on us.
And there's a lot of it bad.
Yeah. So with that, we're officially finished. If anyone wants to share any thoughts? I'm so sorry. I'm going to look back to see where I did it, but I'm so sorry. The classes are always going to be 7 to 8, not 8 to 9.
So how many more of these classes are we?
It's going to go now indefinitely until you guys tell me that you're bored of it.
I must put something.
Yeah.
If
Or if there's a specific week that we can't do it, I'll let you know.
The newest song in Israel called Hashem Yitbarach Tamid Ohev Otei.
Mm.
And the original writer is Eliatzur, and his Rebbe has a little book, and he wrote these words on the back of the book. So if you say all the time, Hashem Yitbarach Tamid Ohev Otei, God will always love me, then it will translate to goodness, 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 goodness.
Also, yeah. It's better than saying negative things, I suppose.